The employees faced a whole lot of challenges, including in some tragic circumstances, death of their near and dear ones. So such projects are outsourced because companies typically cannot execute them at the highest efficiency level within the company. I think driving technology strategies and helping companies achieve
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another insightful episode of FaceTime with Leaders, the podcast where we delve into the journeys and wisdoms of extraordinary individuals who redefine excellence and inspire us all. Today, we have the honor of hosting a visionary leader whose career spans decades of transformative impact across technology, analytics, and decision sciences. He has navigated global markets, built high performance teams, and led some of the most complex technology initiatives with unmatched expertise. What makes today's conversation truly special is the opportunity to learn from his vast experience, his challenges, his triumphs, and his vision for the future. Whether you are a seasoned professional, an aspiring leader, or simply someone eager to hear a story of growth and innovation, this episode promises to captivate and inspire. So sit back, relax, and join me in welcoming the dynamic Mr. Sumedh Rajadhyax to FaceTime with Leaders. Mr. Rajadhyax, it's a privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sunny. The privilege is all mine. Thank you for your flattering introduction. And I expect that the interview and the discussion will do justice to the introduction. Thank you.
So, Mr. Sumedh, your career is a testament to resilience and visionary leadership, evolving from a software engineer to leading global teams across continents. So, along such an extraordinary journey, there must have been a defining moment or milestone that shaped your perspective on leadership or marked a significant turning point. So, could you share that moment with us and what made it so impactful for your growth as a leader?
See, while in my journey, I faced a lot of challenges, right from simple challenges, learning software or things without any formal training, to actually working abroad with minimal support from your India teams or, things like that. But I think the most defining challenge or the most challenging situation I faced, like most of the world, was during the COVID pandemic. It was a time of not one, but multiple challenges. There were challenges from the client side. The client was not sure whether their business would be there the next day. The company which I was working for were not sure on how the revenue will pan out and what decisions they have to take to make sure that they don't fall flat on their face without hurting their employees. And on the third side, we had to make sure that the projects were delivered perfectly on time without too much of an issue. And lastly, what was very important was this whole thing, there was a challenge which both our employees as a vendor as well as the employees of the client faced. These challenges were both health challenges as well as the challenges of maintaining a day-to-day lifestyle, which was completely different to what they had faced before. Now, all this brought the best out of me. Obviously, the first few days or even a week plus went in a situation where we were all shocked and trying to recover from that shock. But then I soon, discovered the true meaning of what all leadership qualities meant. The first was resilience. Resilience was needed. You just couldn't get disappointed. You just had to ensure that your team couldn't get disappointed. At the same time, you had to maintain empathy. The employees faced a whole lot of challenges, including in some tragic circumstances, death of their near and dear ones. The third challenge was working remotely. The challenges were pretty mundane. Many of the employees didn't have solid, reliable internet connectivity. So all these challenges resulted into a big mass challenge. And that's where I developed first was empathy. Make sure that you put yourself in a situation of most of the employees or the clients. But it has to be balanced by a sense of reality that I had to explain both to my employees and clients. So these were the two things which drove everything. The third thing and a very important thing was making sure that I kept all lines of communication open. Leadership being a very big form of communication is something that I realized then. Communicate, 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 communicate. I started my day early, ended it late at night. It was communication all time. And finally, I had to make sure that my team, I could be their sounding block, both for my team and my client. uh, Things that they wanted to express, they had a lot of apprehensions, lot of issues, lot of problems. And even though I didn't have the solutions, I had to make sure that I listened to them carefully, make sure that at least they felt that somebody was listening to them and trying to address their problems. All this were the key highlights of the issues that I faced and how I tried to mitigate. Of course, you couldn't resolve everything, but mitigate to the extent possible. So, these were some of the toughest challenges, and that's how I tried to meet them. And all the learnings of my past and previous experience were suddenly put to test at one go. And there was no choice but to emerge, victorious both on the professional as well as personal front. So that's the greatest lesson I could carry forward. It's a tale I would love to tell my grandchildren one day.
Sumedh, that's such a powerful and inspiring journey. And it's incredible to see how those experiences shaped your journey and leadership style.
Yes, certainly. I think those experiences helped really make me a more complete leader. Typically all leaders have one side which is strong, either the empathy side or the decision making side. But this really allowed me to play multiple roles. At times, I had to be a hard taskmaster, and at other, immediately half an hour after that, I had to be a very empathetic leader. So somewhere between these two contrasting but equally needed styles, my leadership style was forged. And I became a more complete leader rather than a piecemeal leader that I could have been earlier.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Mr. Sumedh, leading operations for up to 700 employees at different companies is an incredible feat that speaks volumes about your leadership and strategic vision. Balancing employee engagement and client satisfaction at such a scale must have come with its unique challenges. So, could you walk us through how you managed to create an environment where both employees and clients felt valued, and what principles guided you in achieving that balance?
Yeah, I think the first thing and probably the foremost thing I tried to instill in the employees is that the client satisfaction is something that is foremost for us. Now, having said that, that is not enough. You have to make sure that the employees feel empowered and in a position to appreciate what their client goals are. Now, how do you achieve this, especially when you have a team of technical members who probably are not fully aware of the business context of the client? Now, this involved multiple steps. And the first step was to make sure that each of the teams I led, there was a close connect between what the client objectives were, the client business were, and what the employees aspired to do. So this connect could be achieved by making sure that, these were simple things. I made sure that each of the client leadership team addressed their teams or their offshore teams within my span. Now, it could be simple things. The simple things could be company news, key milestones, what they were hoping to achieve through the project, or what they were hoping to achieve outside the project also as a company. This made sure that the technical employees were also aligned to a certain extent with the company goals or the client goals. The second thing I tried to do is make sure that all my technical employees, while they were trying to achieve technical excellence, they also they had a good domain excellence or domain understanding. This was done by making sure that they underwent different domain courses in that particular area, achieve domain certification. A good example of it could be insurance. So to make sure that my team was going to achieve domain certifications, I first undertook the domain certifications myself and then cascaded it downwards. Make sure that my direct reportees had it as one of their uh, objectives or goals set in their appraisals, and then it flowed downwards. So many a times you have to lead by example, and this was one instance I did. So communication as well as leadership by example helped me make sure that each of the employees in the 700 member team was aligned to the customer goals. Thirdly, I had to make sure that both the customer, I mean, some many a times I had to act as a bridge between the customer demands and the possibilities or expectations that the team wanted to set. So I had to sometimes play a devil's advocate and made sure that both people understood that I was on both of their side. I was not on one side or the other side, because there is a tendency to do that, and tendency to feel when you are pushing for hard deadlines, or then sometimes you are asking people, the client, for some time so that people could celebrate important festivals like Diwali in India. And lastly, what I made sure was I communicated with the team on a very regular basis, heard what they wanted to say. Even though I was a senior person and most of the issues or problems mentioned by the teams were pretty mundane, I made sure that I didn't treat them as children, but treated them as adults, people who had their own problems, and it was my duty to at least listen to it, if not able to address it. Setting a context in this regard was very important. And I think most employees many a times don't want you to address their problems. They know that it may not be possible, but having somebody listen and empathize with them gives them great solace and motivates them to work further. And lastly, it was impossible to maintain personal contact with each other, each of the team members, 700 team. What I would try and do is go through and do a walk around through the floor, just to make sure they felt I was there. And if they wanted to make sure that they wanted to reach me out for something, they could reach out to me for, without any inhibitions or borders, or me. The feeling that I was sitting in an ivory tower in my cabin did not come across. So these are some of the very basic mundane things that seemingly mundane things, but yet pretty effective things that I tried to do.
So, Sumedh, it's inspiring to hear how you prioritize both your team's well being and your clients' needs.
Yes, I think that's very important, because both can't succeed without each other. Without the client success, the companies cannot succeed, and going down, the teams can't succeed. Their growth, their salary, their everything, their career depends on that. At the same time, these are the people uh, sitting in India. They deliver projects which are very, very crucial for the client's growth. Now, these things are something which are absolutely, they have to just realize that they are two sides of the same coin. You can, one cannot succeed without the other, and the other cannot succeed without uh, the the second side. So I think that allowed me to make sure that maintaining a balance, and firstly convincing each other that that balance was the most important thing for success, allowed me to make sure that both were aligned and looked in the same direction rather than had a adversarial way of thinking.
Rightly said, Mr. Sumedh, rightly said. All right. So, moving ahead, your extensive experience in working with global giants on right sourcing solutions gives you a unique perspective on one of the most critical decisions organizations face today, that is outsourcing versus insourcing. So,
Yes.
with so much at stake in terms of efficiency, cost, and control, what do you believe are the key factors that should guide companies in making this decision, and how can they strike the right balance to ensure long-term success?
Yes, I think, I mean, there are a few key factors which are there, especially where to involve vendors in outsourcing. Typically, the main factors that one should consider is the complexity of technology, or the newness of the technology, as we say. For example, when AI ML uh, was new, typically the vendors put in a lot of investment and effort in all these things. So such projects are outsourced because companies typically cannot execute them at the highest efficiency level within the company. But at the same time, we have to ensure that it's a balance. You can't just leave it free for the vendors to execute and outsource the whole thing. You have to make sure that it's a balance. So your team members are involved sufficiently in the projects along with the vendor. Having said that, the technology thing is the main thing. Some of the other key factors were governance. Governance should always be insourced. You should have a good idea of what is happening even for outsourced projects or all kinds of projects. Now, when I talked about the technology side, after you go a certain time period in the technology cycle, the technology tends to stabilize a little. That's when you try and insource what you do, because you have a balance. The vendors typically want, vendor personnel typically want to move to the next most attractive thing, whereas insourced employees are looking at a long-term perspective. So you have a right opportunity to balance both. Thirdly, typically in-house costs are a little lower because you don't have margins that vendors employ. So the margin payment or the higher cost you pay for outsourced vendors will not apply for any internal projects, and that's where you should start insourcing it. So it's typically a mixture of insourcing and outsourcing you follow. uh, the most important thing is technology grade, and on the insourcing side, the most technology is cost effectiveness. And but having said that, you can't let go of the other thing. I think in-source teams should also be technology savvy, whereas the outsource teams also should make sure that their governance is very solid. Otherwise, it can't give you a complete picture. These are some of the factors that we were very careful about when insourcing. Of course, things like availability of specialized talent, which go in hand with technological complexity capability, plus other things like the ability to ramp up uh, people and ramp down people quite fast, which technology vendors or outsourced technology vendors have the ability to do compared to in-source teams. These are some of the other key factors that are there. Of course, there are a whole lot of other mundane factors like location and other things like knowledge retention is also very important. But typically, some of the most important factors that I said were uh, technology, complexity, and governance.
That's such a nuanced perspective, Mr. Sumedh, and it's clear how much thought goes into crafting a right sourcing strategy that aligns with an organization's goal.
Yes, absolutely. And it is very key because typically what tends to happen is, or tended to happen in the initial days of outsourcing or insourcing, is that the balance tilted to one side. Even today, if you look at newspapers, you will see suddenly there is a lot of focus on insourcing, and somewhere you feel that the companies might lose perspective of the benefits of outsourcing. So both sides have to be balanced, and you have to work accordingly to achieve success.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So moving ahead, Mr. Sumedh, your work in customer pipeline development for AI startups gives you a rare and invaluable perspective in a highly competitive and fast evolving space. So for entrepreneurs who are just starting out and trying to carve a niche in this landscape, what advice would you give on building strong customer pipelines and creating lasting relationships that drive growth and innovation both?
Yeah. So it is very key. I think many of the startups start with struggling for initial funds. It's a day-to-day survival. Is day-to-day survival they are bothered about, and in that process they just take clients left, right, and center. But my belief is if you follow a certain strategy, this whole thing can be pretty simple, meaningful, and it drives you towards a certain goal. The first thing I would suggest or always insist on is that you should have an anchor client. The anchor client gives you stability. Make sure that you devote the initial few days in making sure that you service your anchor client with all the devotion and make sure that the project succeed. It will involve a lot of time from the founders and the key members of the team, but you should make sure that the once you get an anchor client, he's hooked on for life. The second thing is how to build a pipeline. Building a pipeline is not always easy. I mean, people often decide that any client who comes along then will go along. But that's not the way. You have to make sure that there are 3 to 4 areas that you focus on. Say you focus on data consolidation, or you decide that you are going to focus on machine learning, or you just decide that you are going to focus on a certain industry, say banking and financial services sector, within that insurance or payments. These are some of the areas where, depending on the expertise of your team and availability of clients, you should identify a few areas. Based on that, it is very easy to attract people, because what do clients look for? Clients may look for 2 things. One is availability of previous experience, where if you don't have too much previous experience, you have to make sure that you offer them something. That offering can be either pilot projects, maybe sometimes you have to do them at a very reduced cost, but pilot projects are a key to make sure that the clients are also able to sell these successes of these projects within their internal organizations and get you more projects in the being. So the client becomes your sort of your internal or supporter within their organization. So all these aspects must work together. But I mean, to uh, condense it in a thing, I would say focus on your anchor client first. Make sure that you have ready-made solutions, or at least you have thought through of some industry solutions and use cases in certain sectors, which will lead to direct business benefits for the client. Because if you see analytics, AI, ML, the main driver for those are business benefits. And typically these are short-term projects. These typically are not expected to last for years and ages. So you should have clearly focused short-term benefits first, and then make sure that you expand the ring and create long-term benefits. So all these things have to work together and uh, leads us to solid pipelines for AI customers.
Great, 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 Mr. Sumedh. That's such a valuable guidance. Your emphasis on understanding customer needs and creating value really resonates.
Yes, I think that's the basic of any business you do. Especially AI and ML are areas which are absolutely new to the client. Most people are not sure of what benefit they will achieve. That's why it's always required that you work in small steps. Make sure that your technical team also is aligned in the end, that to the fact that they have to deliver quick business results, and not only focus just on technically elegant architecture and designs, but make sure that it delivers quick value to the customer. That those are the pillars on which the whole pipeline will rest.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Mr. Sumedh, with such a remarkable career and diverse experiences behind you, it's exciting to think about what lies ahead. So, could you share some of your aspirations for the future, whether it's continuing to shape technology strategies, exploring new leadership opportunities, or perhaps pursuing something entirely different? So, what drives you as you look towards this next chapter of your journey?
Oh, I think driving technology strategies and helping companies achieve those strategies is a key and important part of my future career. But at the same time, I have one of the widest experiences as far as different functional areas are concerned. I think one thing, before I joined technology, I did also work as an investment banker, and I was a part of teams which uh, were involved in global equity raising, both from the markets as well as with private equity investors for large Indian companies. That gives me a unique perspective. I want to use that experience plus my extensive experience of finance and my technical experience. I believe this can be possible only if I not only, but one of the ways to achieve it is if I become an independent director and can straddle across multiple areas. Because whatever you do, typically technical expertise tends to be siloed, and I don't want to be in one silo, but want to go across. At the same time, I have the experience of working both in India as well as in Europe and US. I have worked across continents, not only from offshore, but also stayed both in Europe for 5 years as well as a substantial number of time in the US. Having this international experience is many a times unique. Not everybody will have it. I want to utilize this experience also when I, and help companies achieve their dreams, or drive them, help them, guide them towards success through a independent director position or a role. I think that probably is what I would state at this moment. And of course, this will evolve as I gain more experience in that role. And, it can move to a different level probably after a few years.
Mr. Sumedh, it's wonderful to hear how your passion for making an impact continues to evolve.
Thank you. Thank you for this time. You not only got me to express my experience, but also sort of help drive the vision that I have in mind, and also my personal future plans, and how I can be of use to different companies or different organizations in achieving their goals. Thank you for this.
All right. So let's dive into the subject of ESG, since ESG principles are becoming increasingly integral to the way organizations operate today. So, Mr. Sumedh, from your perspective, how do you see ESG shaping the future of businesses? And what role do you think leaders need to play in driving meaningful change in this area?
Yeah, there are two things. I think the first thing that I see is ESG now has become integral to the whole, the policies that many companies do, many companies drive. Uh, there are still companies where it feels as an additional burden, something which has been placed as a tick mark to be done. What I see is companies need to go from that approach to making sure that ESG is an integral part of their DNA, right from every new employee, as well as new employees are probably easier to train and condition because they have grown in a different world. But the senior employees need to be enabled as well as helped along the journey so that ESG becomes widely used all across the company. Where I see, there are 2, 3 things which are absolutely must, and respect for the environment. I mean, it's a very simple thing. I work in a company where when you used to sit with the managing director, and he's one of the most iconic figures of India, they used to do a simple thing. When they left their room, they used to just switch off all the lights. This showed to everybody in the company that they cared about conserving electricity, which is an integral part of, because India per se, a lot of our energy comes from coal. It indirectly leads to saving the atmosphere, the pollution, and things like that. Secondly, most of them used to travel in company buses and not in their private cars. Uh, this was another example of how they contributed to making sure that things like traffic, pollution, and other things were always in the focus of the organization. Thirdly, they made sure that everybody had a chance to contribute to society in terms of it could be simple things like cleaning up certain areas, focusing on environment rejuvenation, or whatever their passion was. And every employee had a chance to develop their passion and actually seek the support of the organization in making sure that these uh, passions that they had uh, towards contributing towards the society could become bigger and really impactful. So these are some of the smaller things I'm sure I can carry or help other organizations achieve or internalize, or making it a part of their DNA, to use some of the common terms, and, make sure that their ESG journey is well set.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's inspiring to hear how ESG can truly transform business strategies and create value for all stakeholders.
Yes, I think there are two aspects to it. I think many organizations now actively seek that companies should have a certain level of ESG compliance. And I think making sure that this ESG strategy is right, make sure that you attract wider clientele, especially a lot of clients in the Western world who place a lot of emphasis on ESG. And many a times it comes as a surprise to a number of companies in India when companies abroad suddenly bring up, one of the last questions they have is, please make sure what are your ESG policies and how have they contributed to the growth of your company. So I think ESG is absolutely a great way of doing right things and at the same time growing your company in the same way at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that brings us to the last question of the podcast. And here it is. So, Mr. Sumedh, as someone who has recently engaged with Directors Institute, we would love to hear your initial impressions. So, how has your experience been so far with us? And what aspects of the program do you feel stand out in supporting professionals like yourself in the leadership journeys?
Yeah. So I think the Directors Institute offers a complete end-to-end support. It is just not support. Say, for example, I mean, many people would have just left it at those online lectures, but Directors Institute goes much beyond that. You have your daily online lecture or your dose of online lectures to make sure that you go through the stuff which is essential to know. The second part of it is those weekend lectures by or weekend sessions. I wouldn't call them lectures. Weekend sessions by Mr. Sundaresan, which are absolutely full of knowledge and exciting or interesting anecdotes which help you remember the lessons you have taken by giving it a practical aspect to the laws and rules and other aspects that you hear in your online lectures. These are the two. And then lastly is the sessions like this, which allow you to express your opinions much beyond a very smaller set of people that you are normally going to talk to, and allow you to express your opinions to a much larger audience and make sure that a larger audience also hears you. They are able to identify, or you are able to express your vision and your sincerity to them, and hope that they are able in a position uh, so that you can land up in a win-win situation as far as independent directorship is concerned. So these multiple areas is really one thing which has impressed me about my time with the Directors Institute.
Mr. Sumedh, it's wonderful to hear how the Directors Institute has already made an impact. Your reflections really highlight the value it brings to the leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Uh, Thank you. I think this question was also something which was needed. So to round off this whole session.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much, Mr. Sumedh, for joining us on FaceTime with Leaders today. Your journey, insights, and perspectives have truly been inspiring, offering so much value to our listeners. And it's fascinating to hear how your experiences, from leading global teams to shaping customer strategies for AI startups, continue to pave the way for innovation and leadership in such a meaningful way.
Thank you. Thank you for your, this great discussion, Sunny.
Thank you once again, Mr. Sumedh. And to our viewers, we hope you found this conversation as insightful and engaging as we did. If there is one takeaway from today's episode, it's the importance of continuous learning, adaptability, and leading with a purpose. Qualities that Mr. Sumedh exemplifies so well. So thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep striving to make a difference. Thank you so much and have a nice time.